Jeremy, Brian, it's a pleasure to welcome you today to the second global conference of L3A in Luxembourg, of the global custodian role for alternative assets. So many thanks for being here today, especially in those dear times. I want to start by a question regarding your different businesses and to understand better, how and what you do in terms of alternative assets. Maybe, Jeremy, you might start. What is the percentage of alternative assets, within the global assets you have under administration?
So thank you very much, Serge, for welcoming us. That's very kind of you. So at RBC, the percentage of the alternative asset is around 30% in Europe. But this is something that is growing year on year. So we have an increase of around 10% year on year of the total asset. And if you look at the number of new projects that we see these days, almost everything is within the alternative. We don't see much into the liquid space. Anything that is new is almost alternative.
Any kind of alternative assets?
We do. So basically we cover, real estate, private equity, private debt, infrastructure. And it's any type of asset. I think that, historically we were supporting more real estate funds, but now these days we support any kind of business.
Thank you. Brian, at BNY Mellon, what is your situation?
Globally or Lux? Well, I'll give you both.
Yeah, sure.
So globally, obviously we have about 37 trillion under custody. But from the point of view of alternatives, today we're about 1.2 billion that we administer. And in the last 8 years, that's more than doubled. So in terms of growth, I echo the comment that it is the fastest growing part of the business. And if I look at Luxembourg today, it probably represents about 16 to 17% of our book here. And in terms of movement and in terms of asset growth, by far the fastest growing. We look at our alternatives in four main buckets. We look at the hedge, we look at PE, ORI, and debt. And I think the hedge is growing, I'll say, slowly, if you will. It's just organic, if you will. But the PE, ORI, and debt are growing tremendously quickly. And I think when you look at the market here and you look at how particularly large US asset managers have embraced Luxembourg, and you could look at how the parallel structure or even masters are coming in here with the RAIF and the SCSP. Luxembourg has become a really important jurisdiction for all large asset managers to have some foothold in.
Very interesting. And what do you forecast for the next 3 years? What is the percentage of the relative percentage of alternative assets going to increase compared to the global assets you have under administration?
Percentage-wise, yes, totally. I'm going to answer it in two ways, if I may. The first is the elephant in the room, if you will, is looking at COVID. And obviously we're not out of that yet. So the impact on that on the wider economy and how that impacts, real estate, how that impacts debt, how that impacts just the general economy, we have to see that through. But if in terms of the allocation to alternatives and the continued allocation to alternatives, the phrase I use today is the fact that alternatives may have been right as a phrase 20 years ago. It's such a mainstream allocation today. You cannot really call it alternative. It is a non-traditional asset perhaps, but it's not alternative. You have to allocate to this space.
Yeah, we should call them, for the private equity and private debt, private assets, more than alternatives.
And indeed, private markets, that we refer to a lot of this as private markets.
And Jeremy, for you in 3 years, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think that, I agree that there is what we don't know yet, for sure, but, if we continue at that pace, I would bet that, within 3 or 5 years, we will be almost 50% of our total asset in Europe, just about private capital services. But again, there is still the unknown about how the real economy will move. That will have an impact on the private equity sector for sure, real estate as well. But my bet is 50%.
So L3A is the association that promotes and defends the industry, the alternative asset managers and the alternative asset administrators mainly. And we came, to that business from different angles. Most of the global custodians came from the listed shares and bonds administration, and the investor services firms came from the SPV management, so the different private companies, and came into the space of alternative asset administration. How do you perceive the difference between those two kind of actors from your position, from your angle?
So I would like to make a nice comparison. I think that in 2013 with IFMD, with the new directive, it allowed for the so-called professional depository of asset other than financial instrument to emerge. And it was for us a bit like, the Uber and we were the cab driver or the taxi driver, So we had these, we were under, capital requirement because we were big banks. So the field we were in was very much within constraint. There was a lot of regulation, and then from one day to another, we had new actors that emerged. So I think that that competition has been very beneficial for the sector, because we had to look at how we can be more agile, how we can be less bureaucratic, because for sure these smaller companies, they were able to disrupt the market in a way. They've been able to offer a service that was sometimes even better, but at a lower price, at the time. And I think that that's where we had to reinvent ourselves. So I think that it has been a very good and healthy competition. To continue on my Uber or taxi drivers, some of the Uber were bad taxi drivers, So it's true that in the industry, in that light depository, to call it more simplistically, there were maybe some actors that were less serious than others, but I think that the ones that are serious, they have now emerged compared to the others. So I think it's a healthy competition. It helped the industry to improve and to become better. But of course, as a bank, we also try to differentiate. So we can open accounts, we can do financing, we can use our balance sheet. So I think that's where we try to differentiate. And in some occasion, it's also the best of both worlds that works, So it's, by, this company be doing local SPV accounting because they are present in every or multiple jurisdiction. I think, again, there is a good, today, I think there is a good ecosystem, and it's working pretty well between banks and these light depositories.
Very interesting. And Brian, I understand you have an experience, on both sides of the business. You started with an investor services business, and now, you're heading the global custodian.
I started life on the traditional side, then in boutique, now back in the bank. And I think the comment about agile is important, right? I think one of the challenges historically that large institutions had to address is the fact that a global custodian is typically looking at automation, is looking at straight-through processing and everything else. These transactions aren't like that. If you're buying a building, there's documentation to go through. If you're buying a business, you have to understand what that's going through. So the actual transaction is completely different. And I always talk about managing execution risk, because when a deal has to happen, it has to happen. And so banks have to be fast and flexible, and all actors have to be fast and flexible and make sure that they're engaging with the client. There's the positive piece. I totally understand, right? I would suggest that if you went back a number of years, one of the criticisms that might have been leveled at any institution was, do you understand my business? And indeed, what is a depository, and how does that affect? Does that give the investor protection that it should have? Today, when I look at the industry, and I do think that the word industry is important, whether it's a boutique or whether it's a bank, we have large mainstream asset managers that are selecting provider 1 and provider 2. And if you're in a boutique does not mean small. and boutique, has skills, it has directorships that a bank won't provide. And most boutiques have, I'll use the phrase, industrialized. They have become much more rigorous around how they do their business. If you consider Autonomous, which we can see from here, Autonomous employs 2,000 people. We employ 2,000 people in this line of business. So actually the phrase I use, I say we're a boutique with the power of a bank. But I think one of the things we have to do is break down misperceptions as to, is a bank understanding my business? And I think what banks have done is they have hired people that know the business, that have come from the corporate world, that know the transaction and the importance of the structuring. And I think, therefore, you will have seen banks accelerate in this space. And that's largely led by client demand. If you look at any of the asset managers out there, and as they grow and as they have multi-asset demands, it's important for the banks that they can offer the service. Otherwise, frankly, they miss out. And equally, the asset owners are investing across. And so in that sense, I think, is there space for both? Totally. Is the delta between them as wide as it was? No. We've talked about earlier, the competition for this is very, very fierce. But what clients in this space value more than anything else is robust delivery, understanding the business and being able to work with the clients effectively. And for me, it doesn't matter if you're a boutique or a bank, as long as you deliver that.
And on the delivery side, what do you think about automation in IT? For alternative assets.
Yeah, it's the piece that we always try, right? And we have optical screening, and we have artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and everything like that involved. And for certain parts of our business, that has had huge impact. So on the debt side, for example, where we have millions of documents coming through, and we're 95% automated. When I look at some of the other aspects, say, for example, on a real estate transaction, there, not so much. However, looking at blockchain, what can we do? We're not there yet, but this is something that we're being pushed on. If you look at the fact, I don't know how much you look at the phrase the retailization of private markets, but it is one of the big, say, aspects out there, because DB schemes, by their definition, are peeling back. And there's many arguments to say that it's unfair that DC members can't access private markets in the same way. But when you go into DC, you have to be able to value more frequently. You have to have liquidity in there, so you have a lot more complexity through it. So you need a mechanism by which you can automate this and make it faster and cheaper.
And Jeremy, what is your view on automation and artificial intelligence?
I think that the alternative industry, so what we call private capital services, has evolved much faster than the mainstream industry. So what we've seen over the past 20 to 30 years in the liquid space, has happened within 5 years. So what was done maybe on an Excel sheet 5 years ago cannot happen anymore on an Excel sheet. You see the asset manager who wants to have the technology, they want to access the data, they want to streamline the process. So if in the past we were in an industry that was very inefficient, now because of price pressure, because of that market being more mature, that there are new requirements, and therefore that's where we indeed need to invest into the technology. So it's about digitalization, big data, cloud technology. So that's for exchanging the information, for displaying the information, for making sure that at any moment the asset manager knows where he is in terms of investment, in terms of cash, in terms of liquidity. So I think there is a real trend, and I think that the pace is much faster than it was in the past. It's also, of course, the current environment that helped, that was a catalyst for that. But definitively, like we see that if you want to be part of the game, you need to invest into technology. Either it's through partnering or through, buying technology, because I think that building technology, which was something banks were doing a lot in the past, is something from the past. So now you have providers that are recognized in the market, and you have to decide and choose which one or share between asset class depending on the system.
And do you think there are going to be, or there are already disruptors in the market? People starting from a full different angle. I mean, we have seen companies in the US like Carta, like AngelList on the VC side. I mean, will we see newborn companies, fully tech, doing the alternative asset administration?
Yeah, I think that, again, like Depository in 2013, these are new disruptors. They are coming, and again, we see that as being good competition that will allow us to evolve. I think that one of the key difference is they are not sitting on legacy systems. So even if we are moving, even if we are acquiring technology, we are doing partnership, it's easy to start from scratch with, the requirements from today and not to rely on anything that is legacy within your organization. So they are a threat for sure, but it's up to us to differentiate from these people. And I think to Brian's point earlier, I think that we need to differentiate in how we can, within a global custodian, be a boutique, so with the quality of the people, with, having selected the right system, then being able to offer a balance sheet for the fund. So I think that, these are things that, client value, and we see that because they launch new vintage, they start new projects with us, and it's, I don't see much a client moving away. As long as you do it right, it's usually client that remain sticky. So again, they are there, they are disruptive, but it's up to us to make the changes in order to be up to the par.
And Brian, do you think there are going to be full disruptors? People coming just with an IT solution? I mean, for example, for the private markets, I mean, people that are going to start a fund on their system, I mean, input all the data and to have full automation from day one. And this is almost what AngelList is doing in the US for VC, but it's very specific.
I think.
Are we dreaming or I mean, having nightmares about those kind of
You think about this, right? When we were, 20, if we wanted to do something, we went into a bank and we spoke to an individual. If we wanted a loan, we went in, and we spoke to somebody. And then, you've seen mis-selling scandals and you've seen lots of other things. And so people's perceptions change. And suddenly people trust what they're seeing on their phone. They trust the client experience. They trust the fact that if this is the process to follow, this is the rule I can have. And therefore your perceptions change, right? And the weird thing about that scenario is that people now trust an algorithm without having any idea of the biasing behind that. If you consider this industry, I think the biggest comment I would say, I'd echo your comment around the fact that clients in this space tend to be incredibly trusting and loyal. In terms of how they face off to their investors, if they pick a provider, the provider they pick is a partner and it's a long-term relationship. And they value the legacy knowledge that's in there. And I do think the piece of this industry that we always have to be mindful of is the marriage of technology and people. Technology alone doesn't get you here. You have to have the people that understand it. Now, can a new firm come in and disrupt how it's done? Of course they can. Can they improve the client experience, make it faster? Make it the data easier? Of course they can. Should we relax and consider that to be a non-threat? Then we're stupid. We all have to invest in our own client experience, how we engage with the clients, how much data is going, how many APIs. Learn, partner with firms. If you look at the value chain, it's evident that there are different fintechs attacking the entire value chain, whether that's in how capital calls are done, whether that's in how valuation is done, whether there's one that can carry through. Question, because I do think if you are launching the next 5 billion fund, and you want to go out and you want to sell that fund today, when due diligence is even harder because you can't be in front of them and you've picked a provider that's unknown, that's a challenge, right? But in 5 years hence, who knows?
Sorry, maybe just to add, I agree with you. I think that they sometimes, some of these fintech, they disrupt part of the value chain. They're not disrupting the entire value chain. So I think what is important for banks like us is to partner with some of these fintech in order to, we're not going to build the technology. We're not going to build these are huge investments. And if you make it wrong, you're going to pay it for years. So, let's partner with the right fintech. Let's, delegate some of this value within the chain, so that at the end of the day, it's best of both worlds. So relying on the balance sheet of a big bank, being able to for the asset manager to, during the due diligence process, to rely on that big institution, but then within that institution having the right people, right processes, and potentially the right partnership.
Is technology the main challenge ahead for you, or are there other challenges for your bank or for the market, for the industry?
I think it's a combination of multiple factors. It's it's not only technology for sure, because there is a margin compression, so there is less money to invest in technology. Therefore, you need to make sure that you are making the right choice when investing into technology, and that's where partnership enter into play. And it's also being able to make sure that the access to the data that we are processing on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis for a client, that access is easy to access through API, through dashboard. I think there is no simple answer. For sure, technology is a challenge. For sure, this is something that is thoroughly looked at. But there are other challenges. Yeah, as Brian mentioned, the people is very, very important. If you have an asset manager who is talking to someone, calling in the organization, and talk to someone who doesn't understand anything about the alternative, the private capital services, it's not going to fly. So, people, technology, and then right partnership is important, I think.
Thank you. Your challenges?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ones. I think technology, we are always going to be pushed to deliver more transparency, more technology. And that's coming from a different direction. It can be coming from the asset manager wanting to understand it better, the asset owner wanting to have better data. You look at ESG and the importance of that today, and tracking all ESG indicators. We have clients where we're tracking hundreds of non-financial data points against their assets, to help in a lot of these points. We're developing ESG tools, and our overall tech spend is over 3 billion a year, which is a phenomenal amount of money. But when you think about the resilience and everything else that you have to put into it, it becomes a key part of our investment in our business. But I think when you look ahead, I think one of the challenges we have as an industry is the fee compression. And at some point, the value chain breaks. And so we are very careful about making sure that when we deliver a product, we're delivering a quality product. It's not necessarily about, we consider value rather than anything else, because what we want to do is provide value to our clients. The days of striking an NAV or striking a valuation and thinking that's it, gone. You have to be able to engage with the clients. You have to be able to look with them, work with them around some of the complex products that they're looking at. And therefore, I'll call it solutions. You have to be a very solution-oriented organization, because what clients are thinking of, how they're being pushed, by their investor base is evolving, and we have to evolve as well. And I think the challenge for all of us is to make sure that we are working on the right opportunities.
Any trends in the industry or needs, new needs of, that the market, the clients, have?
I think one of the big trends is easing the client onboarding. So it's not only client onboarding, talking about our client, but it's also the client of our client. So
the investors.
So the investors. So I think that nailing that client experience, that client onboarding is the key things of these days. And you see some of the initiative in the market, about market commodity, where you can find information about investor. That's one way. You have other initiative from funds where with Fund DLT, and we have also initiative in order to digitalize the client experience, but also to find information from public sources without having to come back to the investor. So basically, using the best of the technology, the public sources, in order to gather information, and then only come back to the investor with the information we would need. In terms of trend of investment in the private equity, real estate, infra, private debt, I think that, of course, healthcare is a big topic right now. I think that for the one who've made the right bets, that's a big one. Maybe for the one who are, after the retailer or after the office real estate, maybe this one may need to rethink their business plan. So, I think that the current environment will show us that there will be a lot of changes in the investment strategy if asset managers want to remain successful in the future.
Thank you.
And my comment on the trends, I would just say a couple of quick things. Firstly, I think Luxembourg is really growing phenomenally fast. I mentioned US asset managers previously, but look at EQT, CVC, mega funds being launched in Luxembourg. Compared to that to 8 to 10 years ago, they wouldn't have been here. Now Luxembourg is such a key component, and the evolution from looking for depot light to parallel to masters, is really quite interesting. And so I think as a jurisdiction, this jurisdiction will continue to flourish. But in terms of what we are seeing as well from an asset manager perspective, firstly, significant outsourcing. Significant players are looking at their operation model and trying to rationalize, trying to make that more efficient, looking at the number of providers that they work with and trying to make that a little easier to work with going forward. If you look at the asset classes and look at debt, look at the debt market here and how fast it's growing. The fact that banks have, I was having this conversation with someone recently, and the question was whether funds were, again, the comment was whether funds were an alternative form of debt are now a mainstream. And the comment was, well, it must be a mainstream form of debt today. So again, there's this flood of assets to be invested. And I would say the definition of success is not necessarily being able to raise capital. The definition of success is being able to deploy the capital successfully. So there's a lot of cash. So if you are, as an asset manager, you have good origination, then you'll be able to be successful. But today, in terms of trends, we're in a COVID world. Look at the whole due diligence. How an asset manager can perform due diligence on the likes of us, or indeed how an investor can do due diligence on them. So that is going to change the way we work together. But overall, my comment right now is operational efficiency seems to be one of the top points that a lot of asset managers are looking at.
You're mentioning the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis. I'd like to ask you, what are the lessons of that crisis for your company and for yourself?
Well, my lesson was to get a chair really quickly, because my back was really sore at the start. But even today, we are still working from home. The earliest we'll be back is January, and that's the earliest. I think one of the things that surprised us was how quickly people adapted to video and video calls, and the fact that we have had numerous due diligence via video. That was an unusual thing for us, but overall, as the organization, it's been genuinely phenomenally successful. And it actually, you sit back and you kind of go, how are we going to work going forward? It is. You talked about disruption earlier. This is definitely going to disrupt how we work. I was somebody that flew 2-3 days a week. Evidently not since March, and I haven't missed it, I have to say.
Only my car misses the airport. You get free electricity in the airport to charge it.
Free, yeah, but it's in that sense, it's been fantastic. But as a business, through COVID, I think we've managed it very well. We were very quick to make sure that we were taking care of the staff. And I think that's one of the things that people can sometimes miss. Everyone talks about working from home and they have the right technology solutions, etc. And depending on an individual's personal circumstance, it can be quite different.
Sure.
So I think we have to be mindful of that and mindful of the stresses that causes on people. But as an organization, it's been good.
Jeremy, your own experience?
Yeah, I think that I can echo what Brian said. I think that the first thing that was really impressive, was how strong our people were. How we could rely on them. So I think that we've implemented working from home 2 years ago. So we offered the opportunity to people to work from home a day a week. But then some teams were excluded from that because we didn't know our production team would deliver on under these circumstances, and everything worked fine. And we even had people that were even more engaged. And if they had to deal with their private life alongside with the professional life, they were making adjustments, so then potentially if they had to deal with their kids, during 2 hours during the day, then they were working 2 hours more in the evening. So again, people really impressed, and I think that what has been good as well for the industry, it has been a catalyst for a lot of changes, So we had a lot of projects that not that they were dragging, but we have been able to deliver much quicker on digitalization, on anything that allows to work remotely, to provide information remotely to our clients, to echo your due diligence, to echo as well the conference call. Now you have this conference call in video conference. 6 months ago, if you do a video conference, nobody would be on video. Especially the internal one, less the external one, but the internal one, nobody would.
And to that point,
turn on the camera.
Yeah. Two points about that. One of my New York colleagues turned around and went, we're actually closer now. Yeah. Because in the past, it was a call. Now I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And the other thing is that before, when it was a call, people were reading their emails as they were, so they were half paying attention and half. So now you're having video calls, you're actually having their attention.
Yeah, no, I agree. Same, I have my colleagues in Hong Kong. We are talking regularly, and then he was saying, Jeremy, before I was seeing you once a year, now I see you, almost every week. So that's indeed fantastic. And, I think that we should take best of both forward. What we enjoyed by coming in the office is also, the social interaction, the quick fix sometimes that, just going to a desk, talking to someone. Now you need to call, the person is maybe not available. It's going to take, some time to reach the person again. So, yeah, I think that, again, finding the right balance between the two will be maybe the key for future success.
One last question, gentlemen. Are you optimistic for the next 24 months or not?
So I'm very optimistic, So of course I'm curious that there is a lot of things that will still happen, but I'm very optimistic, I think that the industry has always been able to rebound, So I think that if it's not this asset class or if it's not that investment that is making the right return, we're going to see a shift in the industry, but the industry always adapts. And you know, I think that the central bank are also supporting the economy, trying to make sure that, you know, everything is not falling down. So again, you know, as you said, Luxembourg has the right toolkit for the alternative funds. And I don't see how this could change in the near future. So again, very optimistic, but very curious as well.
Brian.
Yeah, I am, I'll say cautiously optimistic. You know, and you know, anybody that knows me will know that they'll be surprised to hear me say cautious. You know, because generally I'm very optimistic, and you know, I am very bullish about the future here. The one comment I have is we just have to see how the next 6 to 8 months go. You know, there's evidently a number of industries that are struggling, be it restaurants, be it entertainment, you know, be it shopping malls, and you know, there's a lot of ancillary jobs and employment associated with that. So yes, I am concerned about how people adapt and how people look at the world today. That said, you know, I look at my daughter who's 8, and you know, for her wearing a mask is just normal. She can't understand why people don't. You know, so people will adapt. I think our industry, you know, to your point, there's cash that has to be invested. We're in a very low interest environment, right? We have a number of large insurers, pension funds that want good cash flow. So they will be looking for investment opportunities. When we look at our clients and how they've looked at valuations over the last 6 months, valuations in certain asset classes have indeed dipped. But by and large, they haven't. And even through the mid-year when they were looking at, you know, expected credit loss and things like this, you know, it was interesting for me to see how many players were commenting on the competitive nature of the bidding on assets, so therefore retaining the overall value. Evidently, you know, if you were, you know, lending against a hotel or something like that, you might be taking a haircut. But generally speaking, the amount of investment, you know, hasn't necessarily dried up. Moreover, you know, the conversations that we're having with asset managers today, everybody's talking about significant growth. Nobody's talking about, I'm going to be stable for the next year or two. Everyone's talking about significant growth.
Quite reassuring.
Yeah, now we just have to deliver.
Yes, for sure. So I want to thank both of you, Brian and Jeremy, for this insightful conversation, and for sharing, your views on the market, the industry, and giving us some information regarding your two businesses. Many thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Serge.
My name is Alex. I'm the head of partnership and ecosystem at the Luxembourg House of Financial Technologies, the Fintech hub driving innovation in the finance industry in Luxembourg. Today, we are going to discuss the impact of technology on your industry, discover some interesting fintechs that can improve your business, and finally, we are going to have a glimpse into the future. When we look at human history, it's fascinating to learn that it took us more than 100,000 years to get out of our caves, more than 20,000 years to master farming, and some 10,000 extra years to develop some kind of modern writing. But it only took us 400 years between the electric motor of Michael Faraday to have continents so bright that are visible from space. 50 years separates the first electronic computer, the Colossus, and the supercomputers we have today, like the Summit from IBM, billion times more powerful. More surprising, only 20 years have passed between Lisa 1 from Apple, the first real personal computer, and the first iPhone. You see, our generation has witnessed a technological acceleration that is not only impressive, but that has changed deeply our society and how we behave as humans. We take it for granted today, but it's amazing to know that we have access to any content, to all the knowledge and to almost anyone 24/7 worldwide. 3D printing really became mainstream only 10 years ago. Today, not only did we start building affordable houses with 3D printers, but we are also starting printing human organs. Very soon, you will be able to order a new heart or a new liver. A startup in Japan can even scan your jaw for a few seconds and 3D print you a new tooth for only $30. It's 100 times less expensive to fly into space today than 20 years ago. And it will cost 100 times less in the next 10 years. Thanks to SpaceX, space exploration has become a business venture. Safe, affordable, and it's even possible that our kids will walk on Mars one day. I hope so. Machine learning, or AI as we call it, will have, without any doubt, the biggest impact on our society. Already today, AI has become crucial for industry like biotech, logistics, and even finance. Yourself, you interact with some kind of AI every time you have a question. You have to look for a job, you are searching for an address, or even looking for your next holiday. You trigger billions of algorithms that are learning quietly everything about you. 40% of Americans are using dating apps to meet their soulmates. Yes. By the way, did you know that 20% of all lasting relations today are starting on a dating app? Even on Tinder, yes, Tinder, 14% of matches end up by a marriage. Surprising, I know. Even more intriguing, in Japan, every year, thousands of humans are marrying a virtual companion, an avatar living in a box, and it's called cross-dimension weddings. True story. The way we communicate, build, deliver, goods, travel, learn, and love is changing faster than we think. And it will be radically different in the coming years. But what about finance, Alex? It would be a mistake to think that your industry is not changing just because you are still using Excel after 20 years. You see, if you open your first bank account today, a bank is the last thing you need. Revolut, N26, Hype, Monzo, and so many others will allow you to open your bank account under 3 minutes. You can even have a debit card, a saving account, transfer money worldwide. And guess what? It's almost free. You want to invest your money? No financial advisor or banker is needed today. Plenty of platforms are allowing you to trade with almost zero commission or fees. Even better, an algorithm will do the job for you. 10 years ago, Alibaba Group launched what we call the single day, their own Black Friday for single people in China. What started like a joke has become a 40 billion business in only 24 hours. The first billion is spent in under 68 seconds. By comparison, the Black Friday last year made $7 billion. Of course, you're going to say, Alex, those guys are 1.3 billion in China. You're right, and that's the point. Ask yourself, how can they manage such a volume? Alipay has almost 1 million transactions per second during a single day, and 120,000 transactions per second in normal times. Today, Visa has less than 2,000 transactions per second in the world at any time, and couldn't manage more than 25 transactions per second anyway. So the question is, how can they do it? Every 3 years, they rebuild everything, their entire operating system. No legacy system, no excuses. They disrupt themselves before someone else does. And more important, they put AI at the core of the business model. Everything has to be digital, automatic, and data-driven. No human bottleneck. It allows them to build a bank called My Bank that has already lent more than $300 billion to more than 16 million SMEs and individual entrepreneurs in the last years. An impressive credit scoring based on thousands of data points, and all of that is executed in less than 3 minutes. It costs them 1,000 times less to process a credit scoring demand than a traditional bank. By the way, the bank still employs the same number of people since it started, 300. This AI-first mindset has allowed Ant Financial to build the largest market fund in the world, just by allowing 370 million of the users to save and invest their spare change, reaching almost $300 billion assets under management. The second market fund in the world is JP Morgan with 150 billion, half the size. By the way, it's easy to forget that Alibaba is not a bank, is not an investment firm. It's an e-commerce platform, collecting information from millions of transactions every day. And markets understand this. 20 years ago, the most valuable firms were oil companies and banks, Exxon, Citi, Total, Walmart. Today is Apple, Facebook, Google, Amazon, Netflix. Data is the new oil. The ones that can access it and can use it are the big winners. You might think that all of this is just nice information to share, and it has nothing to do with you. Think again. The way your clients are making, saving, and investing the money is evolving. What about you? Are you using the best-class technologies, not only to digitalize your processes, but also to provide added value to your clients? How do you capture data? How do you monetize it? Imagined by our finance minister, Mr. Pierre Gramegna, 3 years ago, and co-founded with public and private partners, the Loft has for mission to foster innovation in Luxembourg financial industry and to help you respond to those questions. We support our founders, our partners, and our fintech members to collaborate, imagine, and build the technologies that will define the future of finance. Today, we incubate 77 amazing startups that are already defining the business as you know it. But there are more than 200 fintechs in Luxembourg that could help your business, from RegTech to FunTech and blockchain. You have access to the best technology at your front door. Let me give you 3 examples of fintechs that might be interesting for you. Speaking of data, Domos FS provides powerful tools that can help you turn your data into strategic information. It's a software-as-a-service solution dedicated to alternative investment funds, especially private equity and real estate. Let's watch the short video.
Hello, I am Benoît Moulin, co-founder of Domos, the specialized solution for private equity, real estate, debt, or infrastructure investments. Domos allows GPs, LPs, AFMs, depository banks, or PSF to cut costs, gain control, and be compliant.
Monitor your portfolio, manage your LP's operations, perform your investments, deal with your risks, ensure your compliance, generate accounting entries, release regulatory reports, produce data analytics, or manage your investor relations. Ready to use? Plug and play. Implement Domos with ease.
Lingua Custodia provides automatic translation of your document with a very powerful AI. Fast, accurate, and affordable. Let's find out more. Stampify provides digital compliance and legally binding corporate governance. Let's watch the video. My presentation today will not be complete without me giving you a glimpse into the future. At the Loft, we have visionary entrepreneurs, but also R&D firms that have scientists that can map the future for us. Let's hear what they have to say. Let's listen from BTO Research. We have evolved from cave hunters to fund managers, from nomads to planet explorers. Evolution is an interesting concept because we are always trying to make progress. But why? A simple yet powerful driver, the survival of humankind. But beyond survival, we want to try to make the life of our kids better than ours. That's what motivates entrepreneurs to make the world a better place, refugees to risk their lives to reach better lands, and force most of us to wake up every morning. In the end, you see, technology is just a tool to build a better future for the next generation. And that's all that matters. At the Loft, we are proud to support 4 educational programs for kids between 4 to 18 years old. This is a picture of Kids Life Skills, a program teaching kids every weekend at the Loft the logic behind coding, robots, and how to become an entrepreneur. We live in challenging times today, but this image gives me hope that the best and the most exciting years are ahead of us. Not only because technology, but because our willingness to do more with it. So please reach out to us. Let's write the future together, not just for us, but for them. For the generation to come, we shouldn't and we can't stop progress. Thank you very much.